thing is that okay? So this is I actually try to teach this at conventions. Also, it's like um, they want a publisher.
Yeah.
Okay, the publisher is who would want you. Okay, so like if you try to get the license yourself, like even if I had tried to get the license for Apes back then by myself and not had formed a studio beforehand,
Hmm.
you know, um, they would have said, "You're a dude. Why are we going to give this to you?" Because they don't do the novels themselves. They obviously hire a publisher licenses it, and then the publisher has to do whatever they want. Okay, so yeah, I've had so many people come to me and it's like, I wrote my Star Wars novel. I need to, since you worked with Disney, can you send it to Disney for me? It's like Disney doesn't want to see your Star Wars novel, and it has nothing to do with you. Even if it was the most amazing thing in the world, they're not a publisher. They don't do that. They get
Yeah.
a publishing house to do it for them.
Yeah.
So so I always tell people file the serial numbers off, make it your own thing, just like uh, Twilight was fan fiction for 50 Shades of Grey.
Or Rebel Moon, which just got.
Yeah. Rebel Moon was a Star Wars thing that he pitched. Um, just do that, make it your own thing, and then some publisher gets the Star Wars rights, and they're like, hey, you know what? That Rebel Moon thing, I'm just using Rebel Moon as an example, that's obviously is super popular, and it kind of feels like Star Wars. I think that guy'd be a good match for Star Wars. So that's how you have to go about it.
Yeah.
I really I just fell into a weird space when I was able to get one.
Yeah, because you also wrote the Terminator RPG. Did you not?
Yes. And I was approached to write that because of Alien. So like, I've also contributed to the Transformers RPG, but me and my co-writer Neil Thomas, we wrote the Game Master section in the Beast Wars book.
Oh.
So we've done sprinkling of stuff all over the place. But Terminator was Terminator 1 and 2, especially 2, my favorite movies of all time. Obviously, the franchise sort of derailed in places. But I also really love the Sarah Connor Chronicles. I don't know if you.
Oh yeah, that was a great series. Did you have to try to absolve those timelines, because that one is obviously rife with kind of alternate futures, obviously.
So I did without doing it because the license was very specific for the first book, could only be Terminator 1.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so now I had to explain things that are explained in T2 without saying it as they did in T2, because then we would be violating the license. So I had to, it was very difficult.
So we're just talking about how peculiar licenses are, eh? You have access to one movie, but not its sequel.
Yeah, we had access to that movie and its Dark Horse comics and a couple other things, and that was it. Okay, and then they activated the T2 license afterwards. So then I was able to use everything from T2, but we didn't have the rights to Sarah Connor Chronicles. So it's like it was very much a juggling act to figure out how to make this make sense. And I think we pulled it off with the T1 and T2 books, because one of the things I introduced in there was the time displacement commandos. So it's this idea that, you can kind of see some of this in things like the Sarah Connor Chronicles and some of the other shows. It's like they have teams of people going back in time to try and fix certain things. So you can play a team that's doing that. And you can't try to stop Judgment Day.
Yeah.
But you can maybe make someone 5 minutes late to work that day, which spirals into Judgment Day's now been pushed back 20 years. You know what I'm saying? So if you try to hard stop something, the way the rules are, it never works. But if you try to find a way to nudge things, you can even wind up pushing the date back 100 years. So these other Terminator movies, which clearly are different timelines, are the result of you changing things. For all we know, T1 isn't the first time this has happened either. Maybe that was one of the changes.
A lot of avenues.
Yeah. So with time travel stuff, it's easy enough to figure out how to make that stuff work.
Yeah.
But So, I love Terminator. I loved working on that. Uh, Alien is the one that was a major, huge hit, though. I mean, I owe a lot of my career, I think, to how Alien has been received.
Yeah, we were talking about the nostalgic science fiction, and you even have your name on choose your adventure novels as well, and that.
Yeah, well, it's graphic novels based on the original novel.
Yeah, but it still has that. It's just one of those things. Like, are we all just getting too old and we're just loving? Are we going to see like throwbacks to Galaxy of Terror and Creature? Are we going to see?
I saw Galaxy of Terror for the first time like 3 years ago, and man, I love that movie. It's a bad movie, but it's really interesting. It's so weird. I don't think it's big enough for us to see a Galaxy of Terror RPG, though. Okay, I don't think that's going to happen.
From the creative mind of James Cameron, who was a second unit director, comes Galaxy of Terror. We might as well have a Piranha 2 RPG.
Yeah, it's. I mean, this is the current thing with Hollywood. They're mining everything that they've had before. For this worked before, can we make it work again? And that makes sense. But it's like, even when publishers have to look at stuff like that. I mean, everybody who told me no about Alien, it's because
that's foolish.
This was all it was.
Yeah.
So how is that going to sell? It was to them. It was Galaxy of Terror. So
okay, I think until right now, you and me should sit down and do an RPG for Krull.
I mean, is it enough to be its own RPG, or should it be like a 5e supplement? You know what I'm saying? Like,
that goes back to our nostalgia, right?
Yeah, no, I love Crow. I'm just trying to figure out if it's okay. So one of the things that I look for, whether or not this would make sense, right? If there had been Galaxy of Terror novels or comics or anything else, which made the universe bigger than just the one film, then there's something to draw upon here. Otherwise, why are you doing Galaxy of Terror? You might as well just make up horror universe.
But it's that IP. It's the reason why. It's like that's why we have the Karate Kid with Jackie Chan set in China, and they called the Karate Kid, and my brain melted. Because the IP, it's like what's gonna make more money, a Krull RPG or something that looks and feels like Krull? It's that name is what's important, right?
Well, how big is that name is what it comes down to. Because the only comic book for Krull that they did was a movie adaptation.
Yeah.
So when you say Krull, does anyone know what the hell it is? I mean,
Paco, do you know what Krull is?
No.
All right, fine, you win. I'm gonna make you. That's gonna be your assignment. Your assignment this week is to watch Krull. You get to listen to one of the best soundtracks ever before it got repurposed. How about Battle Beyond the Stars?
That's a great movie too. Do you know that one or no?
I don't. I feel very inadequate all of a sudden.
It's a Roger Corman movie with John Boy from the Waltons as like the Luke Skywalker type character.
Yeah.
In my defense, I will say, if you're talking nostalgia, it is very likely that some of those films have been released in Spain under Spanish title. And in Spain, we are incredibly obnoxious that we don't give a shit about the original title and we just translate whatever the hell we want. So anything can be called absolutely anything else. So maybe I've seen it, and I don't know what movie exactly you're talking about. Maybe.
If you see the spaceship, the main spaceship, it is the most recognizable.
Your hand motions, man.
Yeah, I'm doing that intentionally. One of the most recognizable spacecraft designs. The X-Wing, the Millennium Falcon, and the ship from Battle Beyond the Stars will, I think, go down in history. It is spectacular.
So if you wanted to do Galaxy of Terror, Beyond the Stars, a bunch of these others, right? You would need to handle it like Evil Genius did originally by doing.
They're one-offs. Yeah.
Yeah, what I mean, I wouldn't do it exactly like that, but I'm saying is, here's the core book, and here's source books that you can use. That core book, okay. I wouldn't do it as a one-off thing. I think that people will skip that book. But if they're like, man, I really don't know anything about Galaxy of Terror, but it's got these cool monster rules in it that I could use for the other one, so then that works. So yeah, it would be a multi-pronged thing. But the strange thing is that it's like, it's not easy to get the rights to those old things, because like they've been sold a million times and nobody knows who has the rights anymore. And then if they were sold to a big house, like if Warner Brothers owns it, like I'm just pulling a name out of my hat. They don't even know they own it. The famous thing is I was friends with Richard Hatch, who was Apollo on Battlestar Galactica.
Nice.
And yeah, we were close. His death still affects me. But in the 90s, he went to Universal to try to get the rights to Battlestar.
I remember this, yeah.
And he sat there in a meeting with them, and they were like, we don't own that, do we? Like, they had no idea. So because it was so off their radar. And I don't know if you've seen, but a lot of those movies that are the types that you're talking about, every now and then you'll see like, I can't remember what its name is, some space movie that has like all the space action footage is from Battlestar Galactica. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Well, I know that Corman repurposed almost every single second of Battle Beyond the Stars, because unfortunately we're talking about Galaxy of Terror. Yeah, James Cameron was one of the effects people who worked on Battle Beyond the Stars, which is the reason why it looks so good. But as a result, it being Corman, repurposed that footage in 100 different movies. And BSG was the same way. BSG ended up selling some of their visual effects shots to other films.
Yeah, Universal sold it, and it's like it would never happen nowadays because they diminished their IP by doing that. So it's these older films. It's like I would love to do like pretty much. In fact, if we found a way to do it, I'd want you on.
But Buck Rogers probably has some appeal, wouldn't it?
What?
Wouldn't a Buck Rogers IP have some appeal, or do you think that's also dated?
So Buck Rogers is in a weird limbo right now, because the rights were challenged by the guy who wrote the book as opposed to the guy who created it, and this is why my second and third novella never came out, because got tied up in legal stuff. So I hear, Legendary bought it. Oh, this guy bought it, and now this, but I have no idea what's going on with it at the moment.
Why we'll never see a Last Starfighter sequel.
Yeah. If you did the 70s version of Buck Rogers, I think it's probably too dated. Like, I love that version, and that's what my novellas were. In fact, because season 2 was a complete departure from season 1.
Yeah,
my novellas are pretty much season 1.5, and it explains why everything changed so much. Unfortunately, the first one's the only one that came out.
In the same way, Space 1999's second season was so radically different from its first season.
Right, and that's something that we were trying to address in the comic series that I did. So it's like, I'm a continuity freak, and it's, trying to find jobs where that's useful is the challenge, right?
Well, it seems like continuity, is very. For me, continuity is I have ADHD and I'm on the spectrum, so continuity is like imperative to me. I
was just diagnosed a few months ago.
Why is it? It's unfortunate that we all I got diagnosed 3 years ago, and it was just one of those things where I was like, well, that makes sense to me now. How do I absolve all the issues that I suffered from the 90s and the 2000s and so forth?
But I also realized, when I was diagnosed, I realized that I was actually diagnosed in second grade. And back then, Ritalin was people were using, and there was all this, they were coming up and was doing all this weird stuff. And my mother's like, I'm not putting my kid on drugs. So it just sort of got forgotten about. And then now here it is. It's been, oh yeah, your entire life has been this. Like all those things that made no sense suddenly make sense. I totally hear you.
Well, that was it. At least that conversation happened. My parents' solution was put me into Christian school.
I was in Catholic school.
Yeah, that was traumatic. Like talking about, like I said, suddenly this became a support group. Do we have time to talk about Alien for a little bit?
Yeah, bloody hope so.
I mean, unless you have a limit.
I don't have a limit, but so when you are a creative consultant, that's one thing I was actually having a conversation with my wife just recently about the fact that certain franchises have people who run their franchises, like they are controlled, like, you know, whether it be a Lucas, you know, not really technically a Roddenberry per se, but Brandon, you know, but other
Rick Berman in the 90s.
The Rick Berman in the 90s, that was the name of it. I was trying to say Brandon Braga, but it wasn't Brandon Braga, it was Rick Berman. But people who basically shepherd these IPs, and we're seeing Alex Kurtzman, who's kind of running Trek now, and one of the things I was telling my wife, because my wife, for some reason, just in the last 2 months said, I want to watch these Alien movies that you love so much. And she has been petrified. So she's been going in sequence. And I'm like, okay. She's like, well, what's canon? I go, well, and I'm like, she's like, oh God, the mansplaining is going to begin. She's going to sit back. I'm going to get my coffee. I'm going to sit down. And he's going to explain to me. And I try to explain to her how things work. And I said a few things, the fact that there's a bunch of all stuff coming out, and it's all before Alien 3, because Alien 3 hits this wall that no one wants to touch because they haven't decided what they want to do with Alien 3. I always feel that Alien 3 is this limbo. It's like we're going to create all this content leading into Alien 3, because when we hit Alien 3, we have to resolve whether or not Alien 3 happens or not. And I was explaining to my wife the fact that, well, what do I want to watch? Okay, we're going to watch Alien. We're going to, no, I don't want to do them in sequence. Like, okay, we're going to watch Prometheus, and then we're going to watch Covenant, and then just going to watch Alien. She gets the Alien. She's like, I got questions. I'm like, okay, I know you've got questions, and I don't actually have an answer because, and I explained to her, she's like, oh God, here we go again. How is the fact that Alien never had a creative owner other than Fox that just wanted to print money? Was that difficult to try to say, okay, we're going to take, I got to create a continuity? Because you have for those people interested, there's a document on your personal blog which talks at length about what is canonical, and can maybe explain what barroom canon is to our viewers.
Sure. Before we jump into that, though, I will tell you I never would have done what you did in regards to your wife. I would never start her with Prometheus, and I actually like Prometheus. I the look on your face is great. I like Prometheus. If you put the scenes back in that were cut out, Prometheus makes sense completely. And there's a version of it out there that's like that. But that's not the place to start, man. You need the mystery of the alien. Okay?
I know. But she's done sequential stuff for Star Wars, where she has watched all of Star Wars in sequence. So just something. She also binges Bones twice a year, so I'll let her do her thing. But specifically, that was
Empire Strikes Back is ruined if you watch the prequels first. No, I am your father. Well, duh, he's the father if you watch the prequels first.
Well, it's not like she didn't know what was coming, but
okay.
But for me, what was fascinating for me, and this is something like I was a fan of Alien. I always make jokes. In fact, I was so scared as a child. I watched the first half an hour of Alien. They get inside the alien ship, and I would stop watching. And so I watched that about 30 times before I saw it all the way through. I saw Alien 3 in the theaters. I've seen every Alien film in the theater since then. Obviously, I had to do a lot of research for my own Alien projects. I've run Alien games before yours came out. So for a while, back in the late 90s, there were only a handful, about maybe 16 really well-reputable alien sites. There was an alien database that was on there, and I was listed in that. So there was this close niche that has exploded, obviously, in the last 15 or so years. And for me, when I look at it, and I try to explain to her, she's like, well, how does Prometheus fit? I go, well, technically, Prometheus wasn't supposed to fit. And I was always explaining to people who still don't understand. I go, no, when Prometheus was made, it wasn't an Alien film at all. Like, Spates wrote this Alien 5 script, and then Lindelhof basically made a case, from what I respected. Maybe you can clarify this and tell me if I'm wrong. That Lindelhof basically pitched a brand new IP, something that had alien DNA but would have its own complete thing, and that became interesting to Ridley Scott. At some point, like, were you brought on? Like, you were never brought on board to Prometheus, were you? I remember reading an account that you were brought on to Covenant, were you not?
No, that's something I've tried to explain.
Okay, good.
That keeps getting people to be confused about it. It's
okay,
like, somebody like franchise consultant or anything like that. I'm not Ridley Scott. I'm not a Ridley Scott. Okay, I'm not David Fincher, who, as disavowed Alien becomes what happened in Alien 3. My point is that they bring in somebody, whether it's Ridley or somebody who's this amazing director. They get to do what they want because they're creating. Okay,
yeah.
My job is to look at what they accidentally made a mess of afterwards and try to figure out how we can make that work. Okay. So I'm not part of, I'm sure they have consultants on like the new TV show and stuff like that. But they didn't even think to ask me probably for that because I'm not in the Hollywood circles. They're like, no, we want that guy because he did it for this show. You know what I mean? That's the type of stuff they would look at. Okay. I'm in the publishing circles. So video games and books, stuff like that, is the stuff that they would come to me on, right? The Alien Fireteam Elite game that came out.
Yeah, I was gonna get to that one in a bit.
Yeah, I consulted for that, which is amusing because I worked in video games for 17 years and never had my name on one thing, and then I consult on this thing and my name's in the credits. So I was very happy.
So you're the guy in the office, like in the X-Files. You're working in the office, and somebody comes in and goes, "Here's some more lore. Make it work." And they put it on your desk, and you walk out, and you're set there with your red stapler in your hand.
Yes. Throwing pencils up the ceiling. So, yeah. So we're all right. Barham Ken. All right. So, with the Planet of the Apes novels, I made mistakes, not in what I wrote, but in how I explained it to people. And I said, well, I took all this stuff, I made it made sense, and now this is, Fox approved it, so this is the canon now. Okay. This is a property that has been around at this point for over 50 years, right? And these questions were never answered before. So fans are like, how dare you think that you have the right to come and tell me that this is why that was this in the movie when I've had my own idea about it for the past 40 years? Who are you? And I'm like, well, I'm the guy they hired to do it.
Unlike you, I've been paid to make it make sense.
Yeah, I'm like, if you had taken the very difficult career route that I did, which was no steady job forever, and somehow managed to do what I did, then you may have been picked. But it's not even because I did all that stuff I have the right to. I'm the guy they picked. They could have picked somebody who never did anything. That's the only right I have to doing this. And I tell people I didn't decide these things because I'm a consultant. I recommended these things, and they said yes 90% of the time. They could have said no. But this was the wrong way to approach it because fans, especially within social media, have their opinions.
The headcanon.
Yeah, they headcanon opinions, and they want everybody to know it. And how dare anybody say something different?
Has anyone ever suggested? Have you ever suggested something that did show up in something that was official, or has it always been?
Well, I mean, there's a bunch of stuff from Chariot and Destroyer World sets in Romulus.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and there's stuff from Alex White's novels too, I believe. And there's definitely stuff from Isolation in there. Like if you when they enter a new room, when they open the doors, right next to the door is the save point thing that they had.
Yeah,
in
yeah.
isolate, So the syringes that are in the movie, that was the syringe. That's the same thing with black goo in it. That could, that's what we had. I put in Chariot, where it may save your life or it may turn you into a monster, and same exact thing. So I think what they did with, and I don't own that stuff. I created it for them.
Yeah.
So that's great. I mean, it was kind of like, oh yeah, I guess I have permanently contributed to the lore now because now it's in a movie. So that was nice to feel that, actually, and it doesn't feel like a ripoff. And I think other people might feel like it is a ripoff, but no, you got hired to write this thing for them that they're going to own forever. So, but that was a tangent. We were talking.
Yeah, we're talking about the specifically the tiers of canon. About
Oh, okay. So at the end of the day, barroom canon first is something I came up with to cover the mistakes I had made when I first talked about Planet of the Apes.
Oh, okay. So it starts off actually in Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And now in the new Planet of the Apes game, it's called Campfire Canon. Okay, but barroom canon is what I came up for Alien, and it's that all those comics you love from the 90s, which are violated by the canon that exists now, because, I mean, you're supposed to look at the core, all the films. The films have to count, right? But let's pretend you hate Prometheus, and you don't want any of that stuff to count, okay? So, in your case, we would say Prometheus, the version of Prometheus that we know, is a version that was overheard by someone who was drunk, that was being told to their cousin's friend while he was drunk in a bar. So it's the telephone game, you can call it also. It's just it's some version of that happened. Whether or not it's the version that you read in that comic book that you loved or not is a question. This is something for you guys to figure out at your table. We've given you, like I even said in Alien 3, like I knew somebody was going to be a sticking point. So it says that reports say that Ellen Ripley wound up here and that all this stuff happened. We can confirm that there was an alien on this planet and it did kill a bunch of the inmates, but things are sketchy. And then I have the Gateway Station that's from
Gibson.
Alien 3.
Yeah.
The Gibson strip, right? That existed in the universe, and it blew up in the same year that Ripley was allegedly on the
Florina 161 in Alien 3. Yeah,
Florina 161. So some rumors say that she was there instead. Like, it's like you pick. It's your table. It's that's what barroom canon is, and we work that stuff in so that now if you decide it's Alien 3 was on Fury 161, that you can make the story of what happened on Gateway instead, or vice versa. You can do that in your game. It's your table. It's your universe. I'm giving you all the tools. Go for it. And with something like Terminator and Planet of the Apes, that's even easier because the time has been changed. So
yeah, time travel is literally an aspect of the setting.
Yeah. So you can. There's a couple of Planet of the Apes comic series which kind of violate canon from the first movie. I'm not going to mention what they are, but if you're a fan of those things, then maybe they happened, or maybe that story kind of happened, but some of the facts are mixed up. It's just little things like that.
So with Tier 1 canon specifically,
right?
Basically, it's the Covenant short films, the Prometheus short films, all the films, which makes sense. That's always been kind of a standard for most IPs, and only one game. Like, why is it? So this is a strangely specific question, but why is Alien Isolation a Tier 1 canon, and the very famous and infamous Cloning Marines video game, which was claimed to be canonical by the game creators, is in Tier 3?
Well, I mean, I'm not gonna go into super details about that, but that game, there was a mess.
No, everybody. That's not. Everybody knows it's a mess, but yeah.
Right. It's convoluted. There's too many. Like, wait, What? So that wasn't Hicks? And wait, okay. So they did what now? Well, wait a minute. I thought the colony was destroyed, but there's some of the colonies still there. But how did it survive the
yeah.
nuke? And, it's like there's too many questions for it to be tier 10 at 110. Now, if it was a movie, all right, I guess I got work to do.
Yeah,
But,
a cloud of vapor the size of Nebraska, yet and somehow the entirety of the colony complex is intact.
And there's another comic that did that too that said it was intact, and I'm just like, how?
I actually had a bizarre question where I was, and this is once again tapping because I was playing in a sandbox, but unlike what you were doing, I was making my own sandcastles, and because I've always felt like, well, if it's until someone contradicts it, it's sand I can make. The creators can knock down that sandcastle, but I'll make my own sandcastle. And you seem to do that as well. You'll kind of create your own sandcastles, but you do it in a way where it kind of bridges to other sandcastles. Like, well, if you knock down this sandcastle, it could compromise the other sandcastles. But one of the ones I had was establishing whether or not the engineer ship on LV-426, for example, was in the blast radius. And I had a plot point in one of my adventures where the company and the transmission, all the information claimed it was, but it wasn't get revealed until much later that it wasn't. And so our characters had to go back to LV-426 to verify that the engineer ship was destroyed in the processor explosion, only to find out it hadn't, but in the intervening years, it had taken off under its own power. Bum, bum, bum. So, like, that's kind of thing where questions I bring up. Like, do you have all those answers in your head, even though they're not in print yet, just because you're worried about someone contradicting it?
I have answers for things that we can get to or may never get to that are always ambiguous answers. Like that, what makes Alien amazing is that we don't know what the hell's going on in that first book. Okay. Wait, what? Now it's 6 feet tall? It came out of his chest. What the hell's going on? I mean, if you go with the director's cut edition, wait, it's turning them into eggs now? What the hell? There's all this stuff that in 1979 you were like, I don't know what to think. What's going on? And one of the best things about that was actually is that they couldn't make the rubber suit work right. They were trying to do action stuff where they would rip. So the alien is doing like crucifixion poses and all this other weird shit. And you're like, why is it doing that? What does that mean? Like, that's not what a tiger would do. Why is it doing that? And a lot of it got lost in the later movies, right? But people say Prometheus answered too many questions, but it didn't answer any questions. It made more questions, okay? And there's, if you answer those questions, you can never answer all those questions because you answer them all and then it's boring. Like, so instead, I tried to create things. Oh, so that's what, well, wait a minute. If that's what happened, then how? Like, that's what I tried to do with everything I created. Okay?
Yeah.
One of the things I did, which, may or may not be true but this was my thought behind it, was the perfected that are in Heart of Darkness. I don't know if you got as far as Heart of Darkness.
I haven't yet, yeah.
Oh, okay. Here we go.
I may or may not be just about to read it.
So, what, do you want me not to spoil things for you? Or?
Nah,
I'm going to run it, so you can't spoil it. I'm going to read it fully.
So we find out that the serum that was used in the syringes, right, is a variant of something that they found on, forgive me, LV-1113, I think it is.
yeah.
Yeah. So, and that thing was something that transformed humans into the perfect life form, which are called the perfecting. Okay. And they are, they're biomechanical people, I guess is the best way to describe them. The way they're described in the thing, in the game, is that they don't speak, but they don't have a language, but they communicate with imagery. So, and images will pop in your head, but it's like images that make sense to them, not to you. So they could be telling you a story, and you're like, what the hell are they trying to tell me? So figuring that out is one of the things that's in the game. But the thing is that I could not just say it because I didn't want to, step on toes. With Ridley might contradict us somewhere or something. But my thought behind it was, why do they hate humanity so much in Prometheus? Why do they want to destroy us? Okay. And my answer was because they're terrified of the perfected. Okay, because if this version of the goo interacts with human DNA, this thing could happen. And the perfected almost wiped out the engineers.
It has nothing to do with the Jesus Christ at all.
I don't even know if that was real or if that was from fan nonsense. Like Ridley has said some things that are strange, but I mean that seems to be his character.
Yeah.
It's.
He has implied that. He actually has implied specifically that.
Implying is not the same as,
Yeah.
Like I know that there was a script with it out there that wound up being bogus.
Yeah.
Let everyone else go. I mean, and it's not just Ridley, but anybody in the spotlight, and not that I'm in a huge spotlight, but even me, it's like people have said, "Oh, he's no, I didn't mean that. Like, where did you get that?" It's like, so it's very possible that was just something that was in the back of his head, and who knows?
It just came out.
Yeah, only he knows, and only he knows if he wants to reveal it.
Do you follow any of the third, like the TikTok canons, and like there's like what I give an example. So I follow. There's two YouTube pages I follow: Alien Theory and AVP Galaxy. Alien Theory, I have a lot of respect for. He's a very cool guy.
Me too. Absolutely.
And there's a few TikTok creators, and they always seem to speak with with the implication of authority, and I give an example of the things that they say, and I was going to ask you of how much validity do you think they have, and do they have a case? For example, here are some of the examples that they give. The engineers didn't create the alien. They derived the pathogen from the same way as Rook did in Romulus. The engineers worshiped the alien indicated in Prometheus, and that David did not create the alien, but rather recreate a variation, the preomorphs. And these are some of the theories that have been implied. Some people said the fact that Covenant would lead directly into it and somehow absolve the issue. Is that some of the things that you have to kind of work with? Like, do you ever watch this video and going, "You're full of shit"?
All right, we'll get back to that part in a second. But like a lot of that stuff sounds like what I've been saying. So I wonder if they got it from me. I know the aliens existing and the engineers deriving it from them. Is from an earlier script, from what I understand. Okay, I don't think it's one of the scripts that was debunked. But the idea was that the aliens was the perfect life form. They worshipped the alien, and then they got the black goo from the alien and tried to recreate the alien, and the best they got was the deacon. Okay, that's one way to look at it. Okay, the other way is that the deacon came first. Yada yada yada. But it's like people think that this was answered clearly in Prometheus, and I'm like, why would you think that? Like it's they literally didn't tell us anything.
Yeah.
Like, the mural on the wall they didn't explain. They didn't explain any of that stuff. So it was bringing more questions into play. The only thing I think that they really did explain was that the engineers were not these elephant alien things that we thought they were. They were people.
Yeah.
But are they? Is the space jockey the engineer? Or are the engineers somebody who used to work for the space jockeys?
And built their suits to look like them.
Because they were their servants or something. It's like, we don't know. And the people on Planet 4, whether or not they've said it or not, I will just come out and say it. Those are not engineers.
No, I've heard that too. That it's just another colony.
Yeah, they are derived from the engineers, just like humanity is. I mean, their technology doesn't work for the engineers even. Like They have that guardianship thing, which could have been left there by the engineers, because I assumed that the engineers weren't disappointed in them like they were disappointed.
Right.
But there's no reason for the makeup to be completely different. No one has biomechanical suits or anything, and it just like sure, it might wind up that those were engineers and that was a homeworld. I'm completely wrong, but there's enough evidence that it's not. And the thing about the Praetomorph, that all stuff comes from the original script for Covenant and the script that Alan D. Foster was working with when he made the novelization.
Yeah.
Because up until they were actually filming, David was recreating the alien.
Yeah.
And then Ridley decided on set, hey, why don't we leave it ambiguous? Okay? Which did not clearly have the effect he had hoped it would. He hoped the people that would be talking around the water cooler. So do you think David did it, or do you think this? Blah, blah, blah. Instead, fan outrage, because that's what happened.
Yeah.
Look, David has been operating for 10 years without maintenance. He's messed up. He can't even remember the people he's quoting. He can't remember the names. He's become homicidal, which was already happening anyway beforehand. And he's the only one who told us he created the alien. Okay.
Yeah.
At the same time, we're being told that androids can't create. Okay. And if anyone was an unreliable narrator, it is David.
Yeah.
There's plenty of evidence there that you can build this from. Do we know if it's true or not? No. All I can do is, like in the book with the aliens, some say theories of their creation range from an alien species who created them long ago, an alien species who discovered them and worshiped them, and some even say that a mad android created them. Who knows? Now it's up to your table. The actual canon is purposely left confusing like that, and it's part of what makes it great.
Yes.
If
they decide to answer it all, then I don't know if they have a series anymore. Like every alien movie introduced a new version of the life cycle. You have the Queen in the second movie. We've got the runner in the next, which we've never seen before, the dog alien. Obviously we've got the hybrid in the fourth movie. If you just make it the alien every time, then it gets boring. That's why I've introduced new types in the books, in the games.
And Dark Horse have their lines of all their hybrid toys that you could get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. And I was planning on working some of that stuff in if we ever get to doing like a corporation book, like the grasshopper alien, and like something like that is clearly the alien didn't impregnate a grasshopper. I'd love to see how that happened. But
when I did my Alien RPG, I was playing with all of that. In fact, one of the things I did is that I adapted all of the unused scripts. So I actually have an adventure based off of Tui's Alien 4 script, and which I think is really a fascinating script. Which, of course, for those people who don't know, if you're like, oh, what's that script like? Watch Chronicles of Riddick. He basically bastardized his own script for.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, in the RPG, the wooden planet with the monkeys there. I put all that in.
Really? I didn't realize that.
Oh yeah, it's in the core book.
Oh my god.
The core book in the outer rim. Yeah, I mean, I was like, this is too weird of a planet not to include.
That's very true. Very true. Very true. For me, what was I thinking here? Specifically, this is one of those things. Could you feasibly then recanonize Gibson's script, considering how weird his script was? Now with this pathogen or Prometheus liquid, whatever name you want to use, could that now be used as a way of recanonizing, not necessarily obviously the specific plot of Alien 3 Gibson script, but the events that occur? Could that be because it's in a way you could slightly bend the events of Gibson's script, obviously removing the name characters and creating a story where suddenly the craziness that happens in Gibson's script becomes something that could be canonically relevant within the whole franchise. This is a really deep cut for those people who are listening.
Well, I mean, have you read Destroyer of Worlds? Because the creature from the Gibson script is Well, it's in there.
Oh, really? Like, no,
Yeah.
like I said, we were planning on getting into these, but I never really did. But now I'm talking about like specifically, like the whole idea of this airborne pathogen that creates, right?
Yeah, no. So, okay. So, Destroyer of Worlds was about that airborne pathogen.
Oh yeah.
It's not, but it was. Okay. I wrote Destroyer of Worlds and turned it in February of 2020. And then the next month, Freely's like, yeah, so your story is pretty much a pandemic, and we're in a pandemic. So, yeah, I had to write Destroyer of Worlds twice. So, yes, I do think those things can be used. I mean, even the moats from Covenant are kind of airborne. I mean, they don't stay around in the air. It's not like a virus, but so yeah, I mean, you can do anything with this stuff. Absolutely, you can make an airborne version. So yeah, so one of the things that I was going to do in that was that there were going to be cards that you hand to players like every X amount of rounds or whatever, and they tell you something. Right? This is an idea I had, and who knows if this ever would have been implemented in it, but one of the cards would say cough. Okay, so the players got to cough at the table. Okay, and other people are like, is he infected? You know what I mean? Like little things like it was paranoia about who's got this virus and who's going to turn into this. And you look at Chariot, it kind of builds off the idea in Chariot when you don't, you take this injection, you don't know if you're going to be cured or turn into a monster. So it was taking that to the next level because I was taking it, making it airborne. But literally was inspired by the Gibson stuff, absolutely. So it's yeah, talk about bad timing with that Destroyer World set. But I think the final one that came out was much better. Books anyway.
The RPG is tier 2 canon. That's you've placed it into tier 2. Do you have like now talking specifically about the Cold Iron Studios Fireteam Elite? Which I was playing just a couple days ago. What was your involvement with that production? And was there like, did your RPG influence their setting? Did their game influence your setting? Was there something like, how do these two tier 2 properties kind of relate to? Do they relate to one another in some way?